So the first question would be, how did you get into Ayurveda?
Well, originally I had been interested in studying allopathic medicine, and I graduated from the university early, at age 18, and then I was able to get admission into a college of allopathy, and decided that before I began the course I would like to take a trip to Africa. So I crossed Africa from the west coast to the east coast, and then I was selected to participate in an expedition out to this tribe, the Pokot tribe, and then they invited me to join the tribe, so then I joined the tribe. And then I decided that I would prefer not to go back to study to the medical school just yet. So I flew to England, and then I crossed overland to Nepal. And when I was in Nepal, I heard about Ayurveda from the Peace Corps doctor. And then when I was back down in India a few weeks later, I happened to meet some people who knew someone who knew the most eminent Ayurvedic doctor of that time, Pandit Shiv Sharma. And he was the one who let me know that that it would be possible for me to study Ayurveda in English as well as Sanskrit. And he sent a letter to the college and let them know that he wanted them to accept me. So it would have, without his influence, it would have been much more difficult. Mm-hmm. And then, first of all, I was interested in studying Ayurveda just because it was different from modern medicine. And then afterwards I started to understand how it connected to other subjects also, like Jyotish and Vastu and yoga and so on.
But you didn't know these subjects before?
No.
No. But you started to learn them there as well?
Yeah.
All integrated. Mm-hmm. And so you did the study at university, and did you then do studies as well with gurus or with certain teachers?
Well, I was studying in Pune from 1974 to 1980, and it was at an Ayurvedic college in Pune, and then the exams were given by Pune University. But during that time, I also studied Ayurveda. I spent some time studying separately with Dr. Lad, but also with my mentor, who was he was a householder yogi. But he also knew quite a bit about Ayurveda, so I studied with him as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did you practice at any time in India, or? I had to get permission to practice. So at one point I had permission to practice, but I never did, because the difficulty is in India, if you are a good doctor, there will be many people trying to meet you. And some doctors have to see 200 or 300 people a day. So it's too much. Mm. It's too much. Okay. And now, today, how do you see the development of Ayurveda in the Western world? And how do you see the development of Ayurveda in India?
Well, I think at the moment, of course, Ayurveda is still at a very preliminary stage in the Western world, because there are many people who have studied in India who have come to various countries, but there is still there is not a good system yet developed for people to study and get clinical practice over here. So I think the condition, as it was in India when I was there, is that most of the students were not interested in studying Ayurveda.
maybe 90% of them. They were there only because they needed a degree to practice medicine. And so the majority of students were not going to practice Ayurveda at all after they graduated. So the situation is better now. Maybe 30% of the students want to be there, but there's still 70% that doesn't want to be there. So Ayurveda is slowly being recreated in India, but it will take several more years until people really start to feel confident both to practice it and to get treated by it, and then momentum will develop from there.
You travel a lot, so do you see differences in Europe, USA, or I don't know, do you move to South America as well, where
There are differences. I mean, probably most of the differences relate to how in each individual country, how the existing laws and practices are according to the way medicine is practiced, and the way that people who are outside the conventional medical system, the way that they can fit themselves, find a niche for themselves so that they can achieve something. In the United States, of course, the situation is even more complicated because each state has its own medical licensing and licensing board. So there's no national license of any kind. It has to be done state by state. So it's more difficult in a way to know exactly what's happening over there or what has the potential to happen, because there certainly are in certain states people are trying to get legislation about regularizing Ayurvedic practice. They're trying to get that legislation into the law, but of course it's more difficult to do it because that has to be done again and again in 50 different places.
And in general, how do you see the potential of Ayurveda in the Western world?
Well, I think the potential is certainly good because people need to detoxify, people need to eat properly, people need to have cathartic purification occasionally. And so I think the potential is very good, provided that people start to recognize that it is important to act proactively and go out and seek assistance when you don't feel well, instead of waiting until the last minute and then hoping that you will be saved by someone.
Yeah. And do you think the old texts, ancient texts, are transferable to the Western world?
Well, yes, because the ancient texts focused less on specific herbal formula and more on how to understand how to make a herbal formula. So you have to know how to read the text properly. If you know how to read it, in fact, you can read through it and each time you read, get something beneficial out of it. But if you don't know how to read, then it will always be a closed book.
And you mean reading in Sanskrit and not in a translated version?
I think that any Sanskrit text always requires it to be read with a commentary, which is basically someone explaining what you're reading, because the texts tend to be very concise, very packed with meaning. So I think you would find that personally, what I like to do is I like to read the translation and the Sanskrit together, because as I read the one, I can see what mistake the translator has made, but I can also often get a clear idea of what the translator really meant. So I think it's good to have good to have the ability to shift from language to language, because language very much influences the structure of knowledge.
Do you still have a guru yourself or a teacher?
He passed on in 1983, and his guru passed on in 1993. And I never met his guru, that is my mentor's guru, but so I don't know what condition, I don't know where he is.
And who was your mentor?
He was originally from Bombay. His parents had been very affluent and owned part of the city many decades ago, and then started to use up, started to you know, no one is ever rich forever. So you have a family that is affluent, and at some point the karmas accumulate and you have to no longer be rich. So he had done many things in his life. When I met him, he was racing and breeding thoroughbred racehorses.
Oh, okay.
So I had a good education at the race course also.
Okay. And do you have projects, actual projects, what you're doing? I mean, you've been traveling a lot so far, giving seminars. What is the future
At
for you?
the end of next year, at the end of 2010, I will stop traveling to lecture for at least a few years, because I need to take some time out to write some more, and to have adequate time to go on retreat, which I have not been able to do as much as I would like to in the past few years, and which is starting to cause trouble.
So, and as well, would you give retreats as well, or take people with you?
I doubt it. I would prefer to go on my own retreat.
Okay.
That's what a retreat is all about. If I bring a bunch of people with me, it is not,
For you, not anymore?
for me, not so much of a retreat.
Okay.
That's right.
So it's writing books.
Yes.
Yeah. And working together with Claudia more? Is there a
I
plan?
don't know. That would certainly be nice. It just depends on how. It's a matter of dates. You see, who's going to do what, where, and when.
Sure.
So that would be very nice. We enjoyed our month together, traveling in Europe quite a bit. So it would be very good if that could happen.
Okay. The second last question is, you heard about Ayurveda Portal, the platform, the internet platform, what we both are doing. And I don't know if you remember the idea of communication, information, and in an independent way, so meaning we're not selling anything, but it's presenting people and telling people what Ayurveda is all about, and showing interviews and all that. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think it is. I think it is a fine idea. I think the question is how easy it will be to attract people to this subject. That I don't know. I think it is certainly a good idea, especially because people are very much focused on the internet now.
Yeah, they're more and more.
So I think that the just how that we, I mean, people used to think they knew how that how things, they had an idea that on the internet things would suddenly flower and everything would be
because it's there.
Just because it's there.
Yeah.
So I certainly think that more and more people will become interested in Ayurveda, but how exactly they will
find
it.
Yeah. I mean, that's our work.
I wish Portal very well.
Yes.
So
Okay. And the last question would be, is there anything you would like to give the visitors of our portal on their way, on their path of Ayurveda or with Ayurveda? Is there anything you would like to
Well,
let them know about it?
I think the most important thing is that Ayurveda focuses on dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And the most important of those four is dharma, because it gives you the path that you need to follow through life. So in order to get the most out of Ayurvedic treatment, you have to be able to follow it and get a clear picture of where you were proceeding to. So,
And how do you do that?
well, that's a good question, because I'm sure I had some idea in the past, but now it's just a matter of desiring to have a good idea of how to move forward and moving forward. Now, for some people, they can look ahead for years and years and get an idea. In my case, it's not so far. I can look ahead a little bit. But there was a well-known novelist in the U.S. His name was Ed Doctorow, or E.S. Doctorow. And what he said was, writing a novel is very much like driving at night. You know where you would like to end up. You don't exactly know how to get there. But if you use your lights and don't drive too fast, probably you will reach there. So it's I think that's the most important thing, is to have confidence that whether or not it is easy, that it is the right thing to do, to perform a certain action, to see yourself in a certain way, and to try to actualize that image of yourself. So I think, and that comes back down to faith, which is the most important thing to use to get over any kind of disease condition.
Especially nowadays.
Especially nowadays. It is the best medicine for angst.
Thank you very